Hi everyone. Well, it's cold today. It's blowing a gale, it's cold, it's windy. It's lovely to be in here. I'm just having some apple crumble. We tried to take a few shots and the rain got to us, so we thought we'd come down here and hopefully this will be a little bit quieter and we can talk about truffles. We're about halfway now. We've done T2. We've got two plantings here. T1, which is the first Truffier, was planted in 2004, and T2, the second Truffier, was planted in 2007. Today we'd like to talk to you about taste and olfaction. I don't know, some of you may be aware, my background is as a psychologist. I've worked in the New South Wales health system as a psychologist for many years. I don't practice anymore. I'm not registered as a psychologist. I'm doing administration at the moment. So a large part of psychology is the area of perception, and perception's about how your senses work and how that information is transferred to your brain and how your brain detects it and uses it for you to make sense and navigate in the world. Taste is of particular interest, of course, with regards to truffle. So let's have a bit of a summary of how our taste and our olfaction, our smell works, and then we'll go into what it means for truffle. So of course you've got your tongue, information is transferred via the chemical interaction that happens in the saliva. In our mouth we can taste 5 things. We can taste sweetness, bitterness, sourness, sweetness, and the latest one they've identified is umami. Truffles are big in umami, but we'll get to that later on. Our tongue can give us about 20% of the information. The other 80% comes from our smell, our olfaction. We've got about 10,000 volatile compounds that we can sense. So what happens is via the molecules, volatile molecules that are in the air, sensed by various hairs and some mucus, and that information is transferred chemically, then electrically to the brain. In the brain, it goes to 2 areas. The frontal lobe is where you identify what that information is, and you identify, say, for example, the taste of pizza. The other part of the information goes to the emotional part of the brain. A lot of the emotional part of the brain goes to the autonomic nervous system, or the involuntary nerve system, some people call it. And that controls things like your breathing. You don't even know what's happening. So for example, in things like vomit or poo, your dry reach, you can't control that. So those things happen automatically. Most of those things are built up in our biology over millennia. Information like dry reaching is basically a survival instinct. It's telling you to get out of there. Over the years, that situation happening has represented danger. So in our bodies now, we humans realize and get cues from things that we don't even know that we're getting. Smoke, for example, is an alarm thing, which over time in our human experience, in our lives, we do confirm that it's a danger situation. So with those 10,000 senses, we don't actually know the name of them all. And that's a big problem. There are these things called super smellers, super sensors. Some people have super trained palates. Sommeliers fall into that group. Chefs fall into that group. I'll tell you about an experiment that I was absolutely fascinated with when I was at school. Teacher got us to do this thing. So there was these liquid flavors that he gave us, and we had to hold our nose. And they would get placed on our tongue, and then we would release our noses, and suddenly we could taste. What happened with most of us is that we could realize that we were tasting something, but we didn't know what it was. There were some situations that we didn't know what it was, but as soon as a teacher told us, we'd go, oh yeah! There were some situations where we couldn't even though we could taste it, we never figured out what it was. Is that it's not just about our olfaction and our taste, it's also about the information that you're getting visually. It's also about the information that you're getting via the texture of the food that you're eating, via the heat that you're eating, via the coolness of what you're eating, via the piquancy, via the spiciness of it. All of that information is helping you to identify that food, and it's laid down over years and experiences after one another, and it goes into your memory to be brought up and identified, and your brain works at 1 billion miles an hour to do it for you. Isn't it fascinating? Those 10,000 compounds that we've got, we actually don't have a vocabulary for them all. And matching each compound to whatever it is that we are tasting or smelling in our environment, and the combination of them has to be learnt. So sometimes when you're tasting coffee and there are 800 identified coffee volatiles, there are 1,000 in wines, there's only around about, well, actually we won't go into trouble, but finding the actual name of that thing that you're tasting in your coffee cup only can come sometimes after years and years of examining and tasting. So it's not automatic. When we're younger, we have more of an ability to taste than when we're older. Some people are born great tasters. Some people are not. But we all can learn, and that's what becoming a super taster means. So there is a process. One of the things that you've got to do with tasting is identify a vocabulary so that you can pair the volatile that you're smelling and sensing to the notion of the thing. Professor Gary Lee in Australia was one of the first people to identify the compounds in black truffles and to put a vocabulary to them, which was really, really important. It was only up until that point, we all knew that truffles smelt like meat, but we didn't know the compound and the actual name of that thing and put it together. There's research happening in Italy now that's looking at the other truffles. So Gary found about 200. He also found that each state had almost its own signature flavour, and truffles from on the different trees had their own signature flavours as well. How great is that? So once we've got that vocabulary, which he did with a whole heap of chefs, he developed the flavour wheel, and it's about the black truffle, but it's about the black truffle here in Australia. So there it is again, Australia breaks through in the field and we lead the way. Professor Gary Lee has gone to Italy and to France and lectured there about his work. And I know now they're looking at their different truffles over there, the white alba and the various other ones, and identifying compounds there as well. How great is that? So when you're sampling things, be aware with truffles, there are a whole myriad of different flavours. And super tasters, like chefs, can smell a truffle. I've talked about this before. Can smell a truffle and identify the strength of that truffle. Is it going to go well with meat? Meat's full of umami. And so they can also tell whether it's going to go well with eggs. They can tell whether it's going to go well with a whole different things. Remember, there are a whole series of flavours that are in the truffles, some stronger than others. And when you pick them up, you'll be able to tell. But it takes practice. And it takes pairing the compound to the actual volatile that's been identified. And that just takes a lot of practice. Sometimes you don't think of the word. So there's a whole process. I won't go into it now. I'll put some links underneath in the YouTube space below. But it's an absolutely fascinating field, which I love. All right, hopefully that'll help you with identifying the truffles that you will want to use. Hope that's been of interest to you. I certainly love that aspect of truffles and food. All right, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Cheers now.